California. With me, you know him as Pro GK Academy, but I know him now as 2021's 30 under 30 coaches by United Soccer Coaches. Congratulations, Omar Zini.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
That's a huge honor, man. We're really excited for that. But that's not the biggest honor that we got going on right now, okay? Because we're joined by two legends right now. One legend is a legitimate legend. The other one, I'm saying it because he's on the air with us right now. We're joined by Inter Miami goalkeeper Luis Robles, and filling in for Saskia Weber today as a co-host, we have Real Salt Lake goalkeeper coach Todd Hoffard. What's up, guys?
Hey, how are you guys? It's a nice surprise to see Todd on the podcast with me.
Well, it's nice to be on. So Michael, he's always full of surprises. So he sent me a note today. He's like, he's actually said, "Do you know Luis Robles? Have you ever worked with him?" I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I have." So here I am.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, that was the funniest thing, Luis, is like I reached out to Todd and I was like, "Hey, man," I'm like, just because I knew that he had been at Red Bull and I didn't know if your paths had crossed. And he's like, "Do I know Luis Robles?" And dude, and he just gushing about you for like 10 minutes. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure he knows him pretty darn well right here. Oh man. I mean, honestly, dude, people throughout MLS, you know, they talk really highly of you. Shout out to Evan Loro from Tampa Bay Rowdies, who wants to say what's up as well too. We just had him on the show yesterday,
awesome.
man. You got a big fan club, man. Before we kind of get started in today's topic, which is going to be like, you know, what it's like to be a captain as a goalkeeper and the leadership skills you need as a veteran goalkeeper. Why don't you tell us, maybe some of the people out there who might not be familiar with kind of your journey, how the heck you ended up here from Germany? Because I know you went from Portland, then you got drafted, then you went overseas for a little bit, and then you came back to MLS.
Yeah, I mean, before I start, I appreciate you sharing just the sort of positive encounters that you've had with other people, and then of course with Todd. And I don't want to miss the opportunity to also to reply to that, because when I first got selected by New York Red Bull in 2012 through the reentry or the allocation draft, I got a phone call from Ali Curtis, who at the time was working with the league. And then the next phone call I got was actually from Todd. And I remember that one very specifically because I was doing something with my wife and I stepped outside. I didn't recognize the number. And it was my first encounter with Todd. And just the things that he said were actually, now that I think, Todd, did we talk in January of 2012 as well?
It was in January, I believe, because we were trying
that
to
just dawned on me. That wasn't our first conversation.
Yeah. And then we struggled kind of getting you signed. There was, you know, a lot of different things, you know, pieces that we just couldn't get tied up. And and I want to say it finally came to fruition in July. I think it's a July window, I believe, if I recall.
Yeah, I mean, it was the summer window was August. August 8th,
window,
I was selected by Red Bull.
Yeah.
And my wife reminded me a couple days ago that it was actually my anniversary, 8-year anniversary of playing my first MLS game. And Todd was a huge reason for that. I mean, I do remember that very first phone call that we were introduced to one another. And I just remember feeling so positive throughout that experience. And it was a terrible experience. It was an awful experience. And yet the few conversations that we had I just felt like we had a good connection. And then for it to work out sort of 8 months later and talk to you again on different terms, I was really excited to meet you. And from the very beginning, I felt like because of those conversations, it put us in a great place to then have a working relationship. And I was definitely in a different state of mind in 2012. And I think Todd can attest to that. I mean, I think a lot of people can sort of see the last few years of my MLS career and just see all the awards and the success and the victories and just think that, that's just sort of part of his journey, or it's probably been consistent through his journey. And that's actually not true. I think Todd got to experience a different side of me as I was a bit fragile, yet still focused on just whatever task I had. And he really brought that along. So it was through his training, it was through his personal touch that I just would love to take the opportunity to say, if it wasn't for that, who knows if I could have made the transition into MLS the way that I have. So Todd, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I'm very happy to be a very small part of your journey, you know, and I tell you, it's a testament to Luis as an individual. You know, he had, I'm sure he'll talk about a little bit of his story of getting there. It was a long time coming to get him to Red Bull. And from the moment that Chris De Silva actually presented me, he was actually our scout at Red Bull at the time, with Luis. It was one of those instantaneous. I knew this is the guy that I think would be a perfect fit for us. You know, not only from a physical standpoint, a technical standpoint, his experience, the whole 9 yards, but just as a person as well. You know, after speaking with him, and you could tell that there was a hunger in him. There was a hunger in him to be a big number one. And that's exactly the type of attributes that we were looking for at New York Red Bull. And at the time, it was a good fit. And it didn't work right out of the gate. He didn't walk right in that first day and become the number one.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something in the back of my head that I knew that, you know, he had the attributes that there was something special there that could have a really good impact with the club and in the league. And, you know, after we went through, I don't even remember how many games it was. You know, I remember vividly, you know, Hans asking me, should we make a change? And I was like, well, the ceiling is very, very high on Luis. And we're going.
And it was a couple weeks of that, right? It wasn't, you had sort of put your foot forward and said, hey, I think Luis can do this. I think it started to percolate a little bit, but then he wasn't ready to do it.
Yep.
Then the next week he asked you again. I said, I think this is a good opportunity, because it was right before the season ending and the playoffs. And
Correct.
How do you introduce a new goalkeeper into the mix? And you confirmed it again. And Hans brought me in that time. He said, hey, we're really thinking about making a change. And this would be a great opportunity, but it didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
It didn't happen. They ended up playing Bill one more game, and I played the reserve game. And it was actually I played that reserve game. We won 1-0, and I think it was like the first win of first victory of the season for the reserve team. But then that was it. After that, the next week they put me in, and I haven't really looked back since. So I mean, that's sort of the untold part of it. But since Todd is on the podcast with me, we might as well bring it up.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, this is one of the reasons, Luis, why I wanted to have Todd on here, because, you know, I could already sense, just in regards to the fact that the way he was speaking, and Omar was hilarious this morning. He's like, who's this special guest that you want to have on with Luis? Like, is he going to be like offended that there's, like, you know, somebody else taking his shine and stuff like that? I'm like, I think this is actually going to work out really well. I mean, Omar and I have been big fans of yours, obviously from afar, for the longest time. I even remember you at University of Portland. You know, some of the attributes you have. Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. I'm one of those nerds that, like, you know, followed along, you know, with everybody. But I mean, just, dude, your reaction times, and as we might even see in some clips and stuff like that. I mean, like that one save you had on Cubo Torres, for instance, a couple weeks ago. I mean, just that's next level, man. But we've always been really big fans, and I don't know, Omar, if you want to share anything in regards to that before we get into the topic. So.
No. I think, again, it's awesome for us to have you on, that we have the platform now to get a big name like yourself, and then to even get like the, I guess, initial story of like the turning point of your career. Now you have Todd here who can kind of give you another perspective that you may have not even known as a young goalkeeper, getting that opportunity at that young of an age. So it's just like nice to hear both sides of it. And I'm happy that Todd is the guest now, because it'll share a different perspective for us that we probably wouldn't have otherwise had. So it's pretty good to have you on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to hijack the direction of this, but since we're talking about this and we have Todd on there, I'm going to bring something up. So when I was in college, my junior year, I trained with Casey Keller for the first time. And one of the huge reasons that I went to University of Portland is because this long tradition of goalkeepers who played at the next level. And a lot of that goes back to Bill Irwin, the goalkeeper coach that had been there from the very beginning with Clive Charles, and was a huge, huge influence on Casey and his career. And when I was training with Casey, we hadn't even gone out to the field yet. I was staying with him in Germany in his castle in Gladbach. And he said something that, like, in a way, like, I don't really know how to receive it, but whatever. Like, he's sort of the guy I look up to, so I'm just going to take it in stride. He said, yeah, I'll know right away if I'm going to be embarrassed by you or not. Like, I was like, what does that mean? He's like, yeah, I mean, come on. Like, I've been around the block. Like, we'll go through a warm-up drill, and I'll know right away whether or not you're going to make it through the week. And so the reason I bring that up is because Todd had mentioned that as well. He could see the way I was training in the very beginning. And I asked I ask you guys now. You guys work with keepers. You guys work with young keepers. Would you identify with that statement that you've never seen a keeper before? And I'm not talking about 10, 11, 12-year-olds, right? Because those are very formative years. I'm talking about 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds. When you work with a keeper, after hitting some volleys, some shots at them, do you think you get a good sense for who they are as a keeper within 15, 20, 30 minutes, one session, if you will?
I mean, I'll answer it straight up. Yes. I know Todd and I have had this conversation, actually. We've had this conversation, and I know within 5 minutes.
Oh, wow. We're talking to a real expert here. 5 minutes. Okay, I was giving you 20, but 5.
I mean, okay. Now I will say I've made the mistake of when I was younger of assuming that because somebody can train that they can play the game. So I do have to see them in an actual game environment with actual game scenarios before I know. But I know what they're made of within 5 minutes, whether they have the discipline, whether they have the joy for the game position, whether they have the intelligence for the position. Once I've seen them in some game scenarios within 5 minutes, and I don't know, Omar, if you feel the same way or if you feel it takes you a little bit longer.
No, I think I've told people all the time, like, because of my channel, people will reach out to me and say, they're amazing, and if they'd only be in my videos, they could get some notoriety and they can be known throughout the world. And I'm like, okay, yeah. If you're in town, come train with me. And I've had kids come, and within the first like 5-6 shots, I'm like, oh my God, maybe they're just nervous. Okay, I'll give them 20, 30 more minutes. Oh boy, this is just getting out of hand. Like whatever they sold me is just not. I have to be the person to tell them they're not as good as they think they are. And I remember too, I actually spoke to Tom Wheel, who's the head of the academy at Norwich City, and he was telling me that they brought in a young goalkeeper to be the number one. And he said in his sessions he was doing a lot of like technical stuff, but he started to realize the guy who was supposed to be the number one, who came in, was not doing horrible with the technical stuff, but that wasn't his bread and butter. He was more of the game realistic, and his IQ was the reason that they bought him, and that's the reason he shined. So he said, okay, he started doing more game-like drills and game-like stuff where the IQ and different decisions needed to be made. And he started seeing the separation between the guys who were just technical and the ones who had that pressure training and had that ability to use their IQ to solve problems on the move. And when they put the guy in the game, even though he wasn't technically amazing, he was still so sharp and so good. So on that level, I would say yes, like what Mike just said, don't judge someone specifically on training, but there's a certain level of expectation in terms of technical ability that you would feel comfortable putting a young goalkeeper into the starting lineup. So I don't think Todd would have seen you, Luis, and said, okay, he's a gamer, but his technique is just so bad that I can't trust him. At the very least, you have to have like a technical baseline. And then from there, you go, okay, kid, get in there and show me that the IQ that I've been seeing in training adds up with the technique. And that's the full picture you want to see.
By the way,
I think a lot of it that also goes into that, which you can usually tell pretty quickly, is kind of what that mental makeup of that individual is, and about what their demeanor is, and what their, do they take offense when they make a mistake? Do they take offense when they concede a goal? And those are the attributes that I think are very, very important. The ones that, really are super competitive. And that's a big piece of goalkeeping, and having that also, okay, I made a mistake. Now, am I either going to dwell on it, or am I going to put a period at the end of a sentence and continue to move on? And the ones that have that ability to do that, you can tell pretty quickly, of exactly where they are in their mental state, because you definitely, as a goalkeeper, you want to have somebody that's mentally stable, and when they make a mistake, they can overcome it and can continue to thrive in that environment. The ones that, are going to dwell on it, that's ones that might not make it very long in their career.
Sure.
But, Todd, I want to ask you a question real time, Mike. I know we want to get to the topic, but Todd, I know you and
I could care less about the topic.
No, I'm telling you, like,
Robles
if young goalkeepers are listening to this,
for sure,
it could do wonders for them. And sure, we can talk about my career. We can talk about, some of the challenges I've dealt with. But if our audience is young goalkeepers, developing goalkeepers, these are the sorts of information that when I was 14, 15, 16 years old, I wish I had. Right? I didn't get my first formal goalkeeper training until I got to the University of Portland. So that means I started playing soccer at 11. I was forced into goal because I was awful. And for the next 7, 8 years, there was no formalized training. It was just, I went with my best friends to a sand lot, and they would just shoot thousands of times every day on me. Right. And so, there's certain things that you can't necessarily teach, like, being athletic and certain height. Right. I mean, at the end of the day, like, you can be the most technical and disciplined goalkeeper. You're 5'8", it's going to be tough. Right. I'm 6 feet, and it's a challenge. And so this sort of information, I think, is really, really important to the education of young goalkeepers.
I agree with you completely, Luis. And I think one of the things, first off, is that the fact that you saying like you were thrown into goal because, you weren't that good on the field, that was me. And I just assumed that like, oh, well, I guess, I never hit my ceiling because Luis was able to do it. And as a smaller goalkeeper. So thank you for making me realize that I didn't have what it takes to get to your to your level, because we were basically the same person, half Latin and everything. So
I can interject something here, Michael, real quick. Yeah. Again, if when we're talking about our audience being younger, and I know Luis and I have talked about this in the past, that smaller statured goalkeeper, which I don't consider Luis small at 6 foot. That's a pretty average size goalkeeper. But the one thing I will say is those smaller stature goalkeepers, and obviously we had a Nick Raimondo type, who's maybe 5'9", 5'10", something like that here at RSL. The one attribute that you definitely need to kind of overcome that quote unquote lack of size is something Luis and I have talked a lot about, and that's that explosiveness. As long as you are playing like you're 6'4", I could care less if you're 5'5". If you're 5'5" and you play like you're 6'4" because you're reading the game, incredibly well, your timing's good, and you're explosive. You look somebody like Luis, and I'm sure he'll tell you, he prides himself on getting into the gym and making sure that he's explosive. And when you watch him play, that quick, powerful reflexes that he has a big part of his game is one of the reasons why he's at the level that he's at right now. So yeah, you could say he's on the smaller side of goalkeepers, which I probably would disagree with, but he makes up with it. He makes up for it because he is so explosive and he can still cover the goal like he is 6'4". So for those young goalkeepers that are out there that have maybe had that told to them, oh, you're too this, you're too that, you're too small, you're whatever, you can still, if you want to be that goalkeeper, who cares? Who cares if you're 5'5"? Find a way and figure out a way to be on that team, be that goalkeeper you want to be, because there's plenty of examples out there. Luis is one of them, that have made it and had a really, really good career, despite the fact that somebody along the way said, you're not this, or you're too this.
Yeah.
So, Mike, that's
a great lesson.
And that's one thing that I posted about it like about a month ago, and I said, if you were the opposing team and the opposing team's head coach, and they were formulating a scouting report about you as a goalkeeper, what would it say? And some kids messaged me like, well, I've never thought of that, or I've never wanted to be that honest with myself, because that, it would be brutally honest. And I said, well, actually, think about it, dissect it, and see what because we all know the truth about ourselves. Sometimes we decide to neglect it and push it aside because we don't want to be real with ourselves. But if you can actually sit back and realize, what are my limitations? Sure, I may be a shorter goal. Maybe I don't have the size. Okay, well, what could I do for that? Okay, well, maybe I can actually work on my explosiveness. Look at plyometric exercises. Okay, maybe I can get into the gym. Maybe I can do some jumping and core exercises. So really trying to reverse engineer. And I think a lot of kids, unfortunately, don't have those coaches. Like you said, Luis, at a young age, you didn't really have those coaches or people to tell you specifically what to do. But the ones who are super curious and innately curious about the position will find the answers they need to find. And you'll start noticing people who stick with it long enough, they'll start to create separation. And again, for you, I mean, it could have been over when Germany was done, but you stuck with it. And all those habits that you had prior to your time in the MLS now all kind of coming to the fruition. Like, you've already been putting the foundational pieces around the gym work and all that stuff. And then once you got your opportunity, it wasn't like, oh, okay, now I got to get ready. It was like, no, I've already stayed ready. And now all I have to do now is put the pieces together and I'm there. That's unfortunate. A lot of people play the reaction game where the opportunity won't come just because they're just good enough and the opportunity does come. And then when it comes, they're trying to figure out, okay, what do I got to do? What do I got to do? And by that point, it's too late. And someone behind you who's waiting for that inch for you to give them that inch, they have all those pieces already lined up. and they're ready to take your spot. So that's why the fine margins are so important.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, Omar. And even just to continue and take it to the next level is it really takes courage to do that, because you really have to embrace your weakness. And I think that is part of the growth process. When I started working with a sports psychologist in my late 20s, that's really what a lot of the work was, because I've heard this now from all three speaking about mentality, and mentality is a huge part of it. And working with that sports psychologist, the thing that allowed us to really unlock the next level of mentality is being courageous enough to approach the things that I feel I'm not good at. Because one, that does two things. The first is it really allows you to take a step forward and embrace that. And the second part of it is it gives you an opportunity to be critical and improve it. And so for any young goalkeeper, if they can take that sort of personal inventory or evaluation of their game, and instead of fear their weaknesses, they act with courage to improve, I feel like that has been my career, right? Because as Todd talked about explosiveness, I realized in college very early on that I had an incredible vertical, but it's not just one thing to be able to step up and like dunk. It's another entirely to combine that sort of explosiveness with timing. And I think this is why on crosses, and then even throw one more, you read the game. On crosses, I don't feel short. I actually feel really big. And sometimes I've asked, I mean, I just played Red Bull a couple of weeks ago, and I know that while I was at that club, we would constantly assess the opponent. And in that process, we look for strengths and weaknesses, and we try to attack the weaknesses. So I asked them like, hey, what was the assessment of me? And I don't know if they were being disingenuous when they said that we didn't talk about the weaknesses, but they did bring up, like, you can't put it in the box. If you put it in the box, he's going to come and get it. And even though this is something that I started working with 15, 20 years ago, it was really nice to hear that. But the only way that I could have even become good at that is taking that sort of posture of, okay, you know what? Like, I've got to recognize that this isn't a strength, but it doesn't mean that it has to be a weakness either. It's just something that I have to attack and get better at. And so when it came to combining the explosiveness with the timing and the reading of the game over my career, especially when I was first in Germany, I really struggled with crosses. And now I'm 36 years old. My vertical is still there. I think the only person that has a better vertical than me is Roman Torres, who's no longer with the team. So actually I have the best vertical. And it's the two old guys on the roster. But nonetheless, when you're able to combine these different attributes, you can really take something that might have been a weakness before and turn it into, maybe it's not the best strength of your game, but it's no longer a weakness. It's something that you've been able to courageously approach and courageously improve upon. And I think for any young goalkeeper, it's really important to go through that process.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just love what you just said right there, Luis, because I'll be straight up honest in regards to myself. As I moved up the levels, I did fear my weaknesses, and I still fear my weaknesses to this day. And I think that's why I couldn't make it past that. Like, no disrespect to the USL 1 type, USL lower, USL championship level, but that was my ceiling, because I had a fear that if I played at a level any higher than that, my weaknesses will get exposed. Mm-hmm. And I think that, the way you said that, if I had approached it, if somebody had come to me 15, 20 years ago and talked to me that way, I think it would have changed my mindset. Because again, a lot of that,
I believe it 100%.
It's created in my head. Like, I wouldn't be playing at that level if I didn't have any ability. So it was a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Hey, I got to stop you there. That is really important, right? The fact that you're already in that position to showcase means you're good enough. Like, that's something that keepers have to constantly remind yourself. And I remind myself sometimes too, when things aren't going well. Like, that is massive. It's not an accident I'm here, right? I've shown that I am good enough to be here. So now whatever's going on, we have to solve it.
Yeah. And by the way, everything you've been saying right here, and I do want to get a little bit into this topic, Luis, because I think you're showcasing what we're talking about here, and that is being a veteran leader. You know, one of the things is, you know, immediately you came over to Inter Miami and you established yourself as a veteran leader in a first-year franchise, which is not easy to do. I know being in a first-year franchise, it's very difficult to come into a new environment and immediately set a tone. I kind of want to ask you, you know, in your opinion, and it's great that we have Todd here because he gets to see leaders in a training environment all the time. What is a captain as a goalkeeper represent to you? Because maybe even if you're not wearing the armband, like what is it about you at training that you have to represent to the youngers?
So it's been a process. It's not as if, I think there's certain qualities within me that you can point to and say, okay, like he's a natural born leader, but the leader that I am today is not the leader that I was in college when I was captain or on my club team. And that's a really good thing, right? You don't want to be that same person. You want to constantly be growing, whether it's as a person, as a goalkeeper, or as a leader. And the position I'm in today, I'm able to walk through it and sort of navigate some of the challenges because of the lessons I've learned over the years. One of my favorite leaders to really glean from is Jesse Marsh. And there's two things that he did spectacularly that I constantly want to develop in my own life. Is he was willing to have difficult conversations, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. Like there's something going on, and it's so much easier for it to just be and hope that that person figures it out, or hopes it goes away, or hope you win enough games that you don't have to deal with it. And he was really good at that. He did that with the veteran players, and it's something that I noticed right away. This process that we're talking about, this evaluatory process, he would jump right in and tell you the things that you needed to be aware of, things that you needed to improve upon. But then it's not as if he disengaged, like he would just tell you and move on. He constantly checked in. He constantly affirmed you when he saw progress and when things were going well. And I think that's a really important attribute that I'm trying to implement in my leadership is to have those difficult conversations. Because one really important thing to consider with that dynamic is, even though I'm the captain, I'm their teammate, right? Like we have to go to battle together. We have to share a locker room together. We have to be able to go get a drink afterwards together. Like that's important. That's vital. And that may not exist in most workplaces, right? Like they're there purely for 9 to 5, and then they clock out and they go on with the rest of their life. That's just not the case in team sports. And so as I approach it, I don't want to come off as superior to them, but I also don't want to come off as weak. And I'm not necessarily talking about weak in a physical sense. I'm talking about, if there's a real truth that needs to be said, don't like skirt around it. Just go for it. But it has to be applied in a way that is tactful and looking out for the individual. So I'm going to give an example. We have a couple of really young players on our team. And throughout the process, because they made the jump from college to professional in a very highlighted way, if you will, there's certain attitudes that they have that need to be broken down. And as I go through the process, I think it's too easy to just be like, hey, you're young, or you're a rookie, or you're this or that. Like you need to change your attitude. I want to come alongside them and explain to them why this is not beneficial to them. And then come back around and say, hey, I noticed you've improved, because I think affirmation goes a long ways. And so that's one aspect that I picked up from Jesse that I constantly want to apply to my leadership, because we are a unique group in the sense that we are an expansion team. It doesn't happen all the time. And then the second part is, it sort of goes along with that part, is he just communicates. He communicates. And the way that plays out in my life in a very tangible form works out well as a goalkeeper. When I'm on the field, communication is vital to the defense. But what I learned throughout this process is communicating actually keeps me on task. By communicating, my mind stays engaged and I'm less prone to silly errors. And so that's just something that I learned through him, that I picked up through him, and that I constantly want to not only apply in my own life, but then be able to share that information, because I feel like not only has it been beneficial for me, the idea of engaging in difficult conversations, but then the second part is just communicating, like communicating in a way that that is beneficial to the other person, but at the same time, you don't even realize how beneficial it is to your own engagement.
Dude, by the way, I just want to say this right now. Like, dude, you just need like your offshoot podcast. Like, you need like a leadership every week, 1 hour with Luis. You'll feel so much better. You'll feel like so much more empowered afterwards. I mean, dude, this wisdom, and shout out to Jesse Marsh, obviously, a next level coach, who's obviously doing great things in Europe right now. I want to ask Todd here, and Omar, we will talk to you at some point. But how often do we get Luis and Todd at the same time? How important is it to have somebody like a Luis in your locker room at your training sessions, especially in your goalkeeper sessions, and having that type of an attitude? Because Luis, you said something that was really important right there, and that I think a lot of times is lost with captains or kids that have become a captain, is they get this superiority complex where they think, oh, I'm better than everyone else because
they
now
need
I'm
to realize
captain.
that it's not just this like honor, it's a massive responsibility. It's a responsibility.
Yeah, and you can tell just by listening to Luis. He's got a lot of attributes, to him, that he is a natural leader. And he is the kind of the epitome of what I would call a good, solid captain. And at the end of the day, the captain is that kind of liaison between the coaching staff and the players. And when you listen to Luis, there's a couple words that come to mind immediately that kind of embodies that. And he's very humble. He doesn't hold himself, like you just mentioned, above anybody else. Very humble type of person. He's very confident in what he does and his abilities and his personality. He's got a very calming voice within that. But I think the biggest thing, for me, when I'm looking at somebody like Luis and looking at them as a captain in a locker room, is he's very approachable. And you can tell just by listening to him, he has that demeanor about him that if there is a young player that has a question or a comment or wants to reach out and just talk to somebody, about life as a rookie or whatever the case may be, he's not that type of captain that kind of puts himself aside and doesn't want to speak to anybody. Luis doesn't really care if you're the rookie, first week right out of college, you're 17, 18 years old, or if you're a 30-year-old veteran. He's going to treat you the same exact way and be very, very approachable. So I think that's to me is a definition of a strong leader. And that's something I think that any young kid or coach that's looking for a captain, those are great attributes to have in anyone. But I think that being just approachable, to any teammate is huge and key to have in a locker room.
Omar,
I appreciate you saying that. I mean, if I could say just one thing, though, that I think is also beneficial to our listeners, approachable can play out in two different ways. Approachable is in a social sense, but when we put it on the game, let's even change that word a little bit to being coachable, right? Like goalkeepers, I honestly think this, and Todd can attest to this. I can be a better goalkeeper today than I was yesterday. And I'm talking about, like, I'm at the tail end of my career. So physically there's only certain things that I can do, but then how can I read the game better? How can I be better with my feet? How can I support my teammates better? These are all things that you have to learn. But the only way that you're going to be able to learn those things is you have to be coachable, not only in the physical sense of he's standing in front of you and he's telling you, hey, like Omar's telling the kid, you need to work on your left foot, or you need to make sure that your center of gravity is in an athletic sense. And that's one part of being coachable. The other part of being coachable is just evaluating your own game, like realizing that there's still something you can constantly get better at. There's always something that you can get better at. And that's something that it hasn't changed in my approach or my perspective towards preparation.
Yeah. Todd literally said that, earlier today. He said, Luis is probably working on something today. you know, that he saw in himself. He's like, you know what, there's something, there's a
Yeah,
deficiency right here. Yeah.
That's just part of it. Yeah.
Well, and we were supposed to start, what was it, an hour before we actually did. And he's like, what do you think? I'm like, well, probably because Luis is probably in the gym working out and it's running a little bit long.
I mean, I was being a captain. I was actually driving around. There was certain things that my teammates really needed. And I just thought, you know what, like, I know some guys really need this, so I'm going to go around. And I was driving around South Florida trying to deliver stuff. So, I mean, part of also leading is serving at times. And I felt like this was a great opportunity that I could just serve my teammates.
Yeah.
That's why I was late. Sorry, guys.
No, it's all good, man. I mean, that's a great reason to be late. But like, Omar, I know obviously, you know, a lot of people have a certain representation of you because of your social media following and things like that. And so they a lot of times they think like, oh, well, he's going to be this, he's going to be that because of how, you know, how popular your content is. Let's just be straight up honest right there. You know, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful manner. That's great that your content's popular, you know, but you know, I think a lot of times people are taken back by the fact that, you know, you're willing to look within yourself a lot of times and ask for guidance. I mean, I'll just even give an example. You know, in the last couple of weeks, you know, you've been trying something new and you've been reaching out to people for guidance about that. And I think that is a quality of a leader like Luis was talking about too.
Yeah, I think you have to be. I mean, the world will teach you, right? Like if you're too egotistical or you think your stuff doesn't stink, the world will find a way to get you to a point. For example, like if you walk into a locker room and you think you're the guy and the coach gives you the armband because you're the best player on the field, and then you know, disrespect your teammates, but the second you make a mistake, all of a sudden they start disrespecting you because they're just waiting for you to make that mistake. Again, the world will find its way to get that karma back towards you. So in my opinion, I just feel like if you always kind of address things and come from the perspective of like, if I'm willing to concede that I don't know everything and I'm willing to concede that like I need help, then most people will be like, you know what, I'm willing to help this guy because at the very least, he's going to come and listen to me and show me respect. I think that's the best thing. That's the best thing as a leader is you have to be able to concede your ego and have that respect factor, because in any relationship, whether it's with your significant other or a teammate or a coach or a boss, you want to try and make sure that at the very baseline of it, the respect level is there, and that when they're speaking to you, you're listening to them wholeheartedly rather than just listening to them so that you can tell them what you want to say. And I think that's why like interpersonal communication and like just being social and talking to different people, you start figuring that a lot of people don't think the same way that you do. And the quicker you can figure out that there's multiple layers to people's personalities, that's when you become a really good captain. And I feel one of my old teammates, he told me a quote one time that it stuck with me forever. He said, Omar, when you become a captain here at Davis, a good captain doesn't react and scream at his teammates. A good captain will expect their teammates to not be perfect and then have a perfectly packaged message for them when that time does come, when they do make a mistake. And what I mean by that is like you take the emotion out of it, because initial emotion is always going to get you to say things that you don't want to say. And that's how you lose respect. You lose people in the locker room. That's how things happen. But if you can already expect that and already understand that, I understand Todd might make a mistake, but I'm ready to show him that empathy of like, look, we've all been there. I need you to get your stuff back together. We'll address this after the game. But right now I need you to hurry. And I need you to get back to your mental state that I need you to be your best at. And as soon as you can start doing that on a more consistent level, then you start building equity and you start really investing in your teammates. And that's what you need as a captain. And as Luis said, sometimes you have to serve people. The best captains are the ones who are selfless and are willing to help others, even though their situation may not be perfect. I'm willing to go out of my way and make the effort to let you know that, yeah, we've been here for 5 hours, but the game just ended and I know you're probably going through some stuff. I want to sit down and talk to you. Tell me what you're going through. And I think that extra effort goes such a long way in investing in the people. And being a captain is not like a 1 month thing. It's year to year to year, and you build on that.
Yeah. No, that's all really good points. And if I can, there's a story I want to share that actually happened last week that had to do with a young player. So we're all goalkeepers here, right? So what I'm going to share with you, you're absolutely going to relate to. We're doing a shooting drill. And I mean, Higuain just showed up. So when we do a shooting drill, it's usually like 8 guys, right? You know, the forwards, the wingers. Higuain shows up. There's like 19 guys, right? And so we're doing this drill, and I'm not in goal. One of the other goalies is in goal. and a young player tries to chip the keeper, right? Come on, like, please, like, have some respect. Like, we're doing a shooting drill. We're not working on chipping here. So I know that the goalie's mad. And I feel like if he says something, people are going to ignore him. So I thought, I need to speak on behalf of him. So I lose it. And I yell at the guy, and I just say, like, hey, this is disrespectful what you're doing. We're doing a shooting drill. And the message that you're communicating to your teammates is, like, you don't care about the goalie. And look, everyone's laughing. Everyone's laughing at what you did. And I know that he's mad. So if you don't leave the drill, we're not gonna stay in goal. And everyone's like, oh no, like, that's dumb, Luis, like, whatever. I was like, no, like, we're done. Like, the goalies are gonna walk away if you don't leave the drill, because you need to learn you can't do that. So he leaves, and he's pissed, obviously. His ego's bruised. And I thought about how I react in that situation. I realized, okay, I was standing up for my fellow goalkeeper, but in the process, I sort of humiliated one of my teammates. So I need to make that right. So when the training is done, or when the drill's done, I go over and I just have that difficult conversation. And he's so mad, right? And he's trying to keep his attitude within check, because he knows he's talking to, the oldest guy on the team, the captain of the team, a guy that he respects. But I can tell he's seething, like, the fact that I embarrassed him in front of his peers and, Higuain. Especially because he's also Argentinian, and he wants to show a fellow Argentinian what he can do. And I just tried to explain myself in my best broken Spanish as I could. But I realized that it wasn't done. I didn't necessarily heal the relationship. So I went to the gym. He went to the locker room, and I was bothered. All these things started to come up, like, hey, like, this guy's really struggling right now. Like, the last thing you want to do is put another thing on his mind. You've got to somehow make this right. These are the things that are going through my head. And I realized that the best thing I could have done as a leader at that moment is go and apologize. Even though, like, we felt like we were the ones that are wronged, it wasn't about how we felt. It was about, how do we win him back over so that as a group, we're stronger. And as a young player, a guy who's already going through his development, he doesn't get stuck on this. He just moves on. And so that's what I did. The next time I saw him, like, a couple of minutes later, I went and I grabbed him and I said, hey, man, I'm sorry. I think I overreacted. I just want you to know that that's my fault, like, my bad. His entire demeanor changed, right? Everything about him. And then he said, no, like, I'm sorry. Like, I won't do that again. I promise it. It's never going to happen again in my career. And so 2 things I thought were accomplished, right? 3 things. The first thing is, he's in a better frame of mind. The second thing is, and we didn't lose him. And the second thing is, he also knows now that he's not supposed to be tripping keepers during a shooting drill. And then the third thing is, I continue to develop as a leader, right? And that's just one of those moments that I wouldn't have done that 2 years ago. I wouldn't have done that 5 years ago. I wouldn't have done that 10 years ago. But because I take the responsibility so seriously, the development has really bared good fruit.
Dude, I mean, that's an incredible story. I mean, honestly, like, I feel like that's a story in itself that, like, could be like a separate, just little side clip that kids need to hear and stuff like that. The humility that you had in regards to admitting your fault in that situation, and that you learned from that, and you're like, okay, if I come into this situation again, now I know how to approach this in a manner that's going to get A, B, and C as my goals completed in a way that's going to be, let's just say, more successful. And I think one thing, first off, I want to say is the thing is that you have a really slippery slope as a captain, as a goalkeeper, because to represent the goalkeeping union of your fellow goalkeepers on the team and then the field players. Because I'll be honest, I don't know about you guys, but I've been on teams before. And Todd, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like this as a coach, or Omar, where you've had a very big separation between the goalkeeping union and the field players, and has anyone ever had to try to bridge that gap or been put in that position before?
I mean, I feel like I'm constantly bridging that gap. Like, it's already difficult to be a captain, and then geographically on the field, it's even more difficult when you're the goalkeeper. So in training, for sure, it's there, but it's just something that you just have to keep trying to overcome, but it exists.
Yeah.
And it's always there. I mean, I had a conversation yesterday. I took the goalkeepers out a little bit early, and one of the outfield players was just walking in. They're like, what are you, jokingly, like, what are you going to do with the goalkeepers today? You're just going to go out and catch the ball a little bit.
They say that dumb stuff all the time.
And it's
just go through cones. We just go through cones, guys. That's what we do.
You always, but you have to have a little bit of banter with them as well. So I just came right back and was like, you guys have it easy. All you got to do is kick the ball around. We catch it, you guys kick it around. So there's always going to be a little bit of that separation, between the outfield players and the goalkeepers. But I think you have to have, that banter back and forth. They're always going to dish it to us. They're always going to give it to us, make fun of us, do whatever they want. But you can't always just take it. Sometimes you got to give it back. And I think that's where you also get a little bit of respect from them too. If you have that ability and confidence to give it back to them a little bit. And some of my best memories as a player are those instances that Luis just talked about, in shooting exercises, because they're going to give it to us. If they put 10 past us, it's game on. They're going to start ragging on us. They're going to start saying all kinds of different things. But then what happens when all of a sudden we save 3-4 in a row? You got
I give it back.
A little bit of that friendly banter.
I definitely give it back.
Yeah,
I'm obnoxious when there's shooting balls.
But I think you have to be. I mean, I remember vividly, times where somebody would try to chip you, or like it happens here an awful time. You do the standard balls played to the top of the box. They take a touch and they strike it on you, and they take a touch, and 3 or 4 seconds later they actually strike the ball.
Yeah.
That's
the
realistic.
worst.
It's the worst for a goalkeeper.
It's not game speed.
No, it's not game speed, and it's just horrible, and you get the ball when they score and you drop kick it 80 yards down the field, or whatever the case may be. But you have to have a little bit of that banter back and forth to bridge some of that.
You can't let them get under your skin.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So I'm going to share a story right here. Omar, when Omar was a younger keeper, he used to participate in these things called sushi clinics. The reason they were called sushi clinics is because the coach that set them up, all the coaches would go after and get sushi after the clinic. So the coach he's a legend out here. His name's Sharif. He's a different
Sharif. I think I know Sharif. Everyone knows Sharif.
Everyone knows Sharif.
Everybody does.
That was the first club that Omar played at was Sharif's club.
Okay. Which club did you play at, Omar?
Well, it was like FC Barcelona, like in this area in Pasadena, and then after that, the Galaxy Academy.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, but basically, these stories though, dude. Omar, you've told me the stories, man. Because they would always ask you because you were tall for your age at the time, so they would always just have you stay and just get hammered over and over and over again. And the thing is that it would be kids of all different levels and ages and stuff. But they would be so unrealistic. The shooting drills, you'd have like 6-year-olds just like lifting balls over you because Omar's just taking 20 shots type of a thing. And I think, but Luis, you brought up a really good point there in regards to like, if you get chipped in a session like that, you are coming at it from a different point of security because you know that you're in a good position. If you're a young goalkeeper, I'll give myself an example, early 20s trying to make it as a pro after college. Something like that happens. I'm like, well, I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm like, well, I can't play at this level. Someone's looking at me thinking I can't play at this level,
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what's going through his head and that. And that's why you have to kind of stick up for that person, So.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Mike, I think one thing that also too, I think we haven't really discussed enough is that being a captain is very easy when you're winning, when everything is going well and you're keeping shutouts as a goalkeeper, you're the true number one, everything's going great. But when you start conceding some goals or your team starts losing, or you guys are I remember my senior year, we lost probably out of our 20 games in college, we lost 10 games I think that year, and 8 of them we were down 1-0 like before halftime. So just like by like the probably 7th or 8th game, we were down 1-0. It just became so disheartening as a captain for the team and everybody talking together. It just became so disheartening. And then at that point, it's just like, do you really? I didn't have it, unfortunately. I wish I would have. I wish I would have said more. but I didn't have that oomph. And I feel like the true leaders are the ones who can separate, again, the emotion of the season and the emotion of everything, and like try to really channel their kind of selfless attitude and their selfless captaincy of like, I know I may not be playing great, the team may not be playing great, but this goes above that. I need to make sure that, you know, our left back, our right back, whoever it is, I need to continue to invest and invest and invest. And maybe later on we make a late playoff push. But sometimes I think as captains, we need to be able to invest without any guarantee that something is going to come out of it. And I feel like that is where you, again, making the biggest strides, and why some teams start really getting better and better and better towards the end of the year, because they have that captaincy of getting them over those humps, or the international breaks where they don't have, you know, all their players locked in, and you have to play some of those academy guys, which I know the Galaxy, we've been doing it for like last 8 years, for God's sake. We've been playing, I remember one, like 2 years ago, they played against the Rapids and we had like 6 academy kids, and I'm like, why am I paying for this? I'm like, why am I watching the academy guys in the first team situation? But no, that's what I mean though. I think that's where the captains really do come out, and I think that's something that's underrated as well, is who can really, through thick and thin, continue that same attitude.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I mean, there's two things that I'd want to touch on. The first one is your perspective on watching the younger players. You know,
he's
when
just
I
a
was
bitter he's a bitter Galaxy fan, Luis.
no. They've won their championships. Man. They've won their championships.
I know.
And they're such a great organization. But the thing that I really like that's going on, and the fact that that exists, because that didn't exist even 6 years ago. That didn't exist 10 years ago. But when I was in Germany, and this is sort of what went against me, is there was a real initiative from not only the German national team, but from the league to push young players. And it's something that they were very open about. I think in this country, if you're open about, there'd be all sorts of, oh, you can't do that, and there's prejudice, you know, whatever. But it was amazing because they would put young players in situations where they made mistakes, and they made mistakes, and they'd give them 50 opportunities. And maybe after the 50th failure, they'd be like, okay, he's going to play third or fourth league. But the fact is, they wanted to put them in those situations so that they could get the Mario Götzes and the Andreas Schürrles, because those are the guys that were coming up when I was there, because they were playing at 18, 19. And even the goalie in front of me, like, he was okay. You know, like, after we moved on, I went on to MLS, or I went on to Karlsruhe. I played. That was not the best situation to be in. But then I went on to Red Bull and I kept playing. Whereas that goalkeeper that was in front of me, because he was younger and they kept saying, you got to push, you got to push, you got to push. He was playing and playing and playing, regardless of necessarily performance. He ended up going on to play in Gladbach and never really playing. You know, he's behind Jan Sommer, who's an incredible keeper. But he just ended up being a backup goalkeeper. And I just think, like, those years, man, if I was German and they were pushing me, who knows what could have happened? Whereas I knew I was a foreigner, not only just a foreigner, I'm an American foreigner. You make a mistake or two and you get pulled quickly. And so now to see that happen in Major League Soccer is a very, very positive thing, because we need to play our young players. I mean, look at Tyler Adams. The only way you're going to find the Tyler Adams is you put Tyler Adams in that situation to show he can be what he is. And as development academies continue to grow in significance in this country, we're going to see more of that. And that's a beautiful thing. So I'm not knocking there. I'm just saying it's, from my perspective, it's amazing
it's good.
that we get to actually see that now.
But I want to say a good thing right there, Luis. This is like, even like your guys' relation, because you guys have a good relationship with Fort Lauderdale, right? Where you've been sending guys down there, you know, to get playing time. And, you know, okay. Well,
COVID is tough to navigate, but look at Red Bull. Red Bull is a great example, right? Like, during my last 5 years at Red Bull, half the training squad was like a USL or 14-year-olds or 15-year-olds. They really put the priority on developing players. And I think in order for our country to continue to making steps towards competing with world powers, the development is a huge part that needs to constantly be pushed. So at Red Bull, they played young players. Even now, when we played against them and we just lost 4-1, the guys in the locker room beforehand were just kind of like, who are we playing? Because it looked like a USL team. But it didn't matter, because their system is so rehearsed and so clear and so taught at not only the pro level, but the USL level down to the DA, that these players are plug and play, right? It is plug and play. And that's an amazing thing. I don't know if that works everywhere, but they worked us. They worked us, and that's part of the Red Bull system. They want guys to run and run and run. And when you're 17, 18, 19 years old, you're going to run. If you ask Gonzalo Higuain at 32 and 400 goals later to do that sort of running, I don't think he's going to sign. So it is unique in its own sense, but it shows that they're willing to do that, and I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Mike, I'll add a little bit to that as well. And I agree with what Luis is saying. 5 years ago, there was never pressure to play young players. And I see it on a daily basis. We have a young goalkeeper, 19 years old. And there's probably not a day goes by that I don't get asked, when's he going to play? When's he going to get his first team debut? Early in my career, I would have never been asked, when's the 19-year-old going to play in a first team?
No, they wouldn't even consider it.
Wouldn't even consider it.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's a topic of conversation. And I think that in itself is saying that U.S. soccer and our federation and the league is going in the right direction, that there is more pressure to play some of our young players, to develop them. And I think we're seeing a lot of these young players succeeding over in Europe, like you mentioned, the Tyler Adams and the Christian Pulisic's, because people took the time to say, you know what, we're going to give them an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's key, giving young players the opportunity, and when they succeed, they reap the benefits from it. And I think us as a country and us as MLS and a league, we're going to benefit it as well.
Yeah.
I want to bring this kind of back into this conversation right here, because I want to talk about from the tactical standpoint and like the relationship with the coaches, Luis, as a veteran goalkeeper. And then obviously even having the armband even makes it even more of a gravitas, that you have here. Are you involved in any of those tactical decisions? Are you involved in any of those conversations regarding playing other players, regarding how we're going to play, what works with us, giving input, that sort of a thing? And then Todd, I want you to kind of fill in as well too, is in how you want that relationship to be with your veteran goalkeeper.
I really hesitate. The answer is yes, you are involved in tactical discussions. I mean, because set pieces, like if you're asking the goalkeeper to do something he's not comfortable with, you got to figure out how to make the situation better, because set pieces are a huge part of the game. Yeah. My coach, I'm used to putting someone in the six. I'm used to putting someone in the middle, and just understanding that anything in the six is going to be mine. But I don't feel like I have to overreach by trying to get to that vulnerable space at the near post, or feel like when a ball is driven in, I feel like I have to get there because, there's someone there. Someone will clear that out. I just sort of know that in the six, it's mine, and then the back post is mine. Well, he doesn't want it that way. He saw the way I was handling some of the crosses, and he just wanted to have even more confidence in me. And he said, we're just going to put a guy in the near post six. And I just thought, no, like I don't really want that to happen. And we talked about it in the training session, and ultimately he decided that we're going to do it. And it's really caused me to stretch and grow as a goalkeeper, because it's not like I can become that much faster. It just means that I have to be able to read the flight quicker and make decisions quicker. And it's been good. It's been good thus far. But so I'm involved in that discussion. I really hesitate to get involved with any sort of personnel decisions, because at the end of the day, I share a locker room with that person, and I wouldn't want someone going in making those decisions about me either. So it's just something that even if the coach asks, I really pump the brake there. It's just not my place. I want to be that sort of leader. But when it comes to the group and it comes to set pieces, I'm absolutely involved.
Yeah. Todd, anything you want to add to that from the other side?
Yeah, for me as a coach, there's definitely questions that I'll ask the goalkeepers, and a lot of it is, Luis mentioned about being comfortable. We've got to be comfortable as goalkeepers playing with, especially the back four that's in front of you. There's got to be a lot of comfort, a lot of trust, and a cohesiveness that goes along with goalkeeper and back four. I don't think I've ever come across and said, hey, who do you want in the lineup on Saturday in front of you? Mm-hmm. But I would definitely ask the question, what's your feeling with the back four? Are you comfortable with the back four? Are there players in these situations that you like you're a little bit more comfortable with, whether it's an opponent, whatever. Not that is always going to steer my decision, because I'm always going to be asked by a head coach or the manager, wherever it is, my opinions on things. And I always want to make sure I've got some of that comfort in knowing our goalkeeper and what they're comfortable with, which is going to help my decision a little bit. So
yeah, I mean, and even what Todd just said there, this is why the goalkeeper coach and goalkeeper relationship is so sacred, right? Is because you said that the captain is the liaison from the locker room to the coaches, but it also a lot of times the goalkeeper coach is the liaison between the goalkeeper core and the coach. So I think that is the best way to articulate that relationship, Todd.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no.
And I'll give you an example. We have, a good group of goalkeepers here. And one of the things the goalkeepers had a question on, or the one goalkeeper in particular was working on one area. And he approached me and said, I want to work on this one particular area. And I basically said, okay, we're going to do that for like 3 days in a row. We worked on that one different thing. And then after the second day, I actually went to the head coach and said, look, this is some of the things that we've been working on. This kind of came from the player. Can we now integrate that into one of the sessions? And then yesterday, we actually integrated what we've been working on the last 2 or 3 days. And that was all stemmed from the communication from goalkeeper to me. We worked on it, and then I took that and then went to the head coach, and we came up with a functional session based on that exact thing. And he really got a lot out of it. So it wasn't just, I took an exercise that he wanted to do, but we actually took it and then built it into the team. And that all came stemming from that communication piece and kind of integrating and kind of chatting about it. And I think what Luis said, it's critical. That communication from goalkeeper to goalkeeper coach, or whether it's captain to players to coaching staff, it's a massive, massive piece. And if you're missing that piece, it could make or break your team.
Yeah, and I think one of the worst positions that I could be in is if I'm in a situation where I don't trust my goalkeeper coach. That's a really bad spot to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I hope that was never the case when I hope he's not referencing that was.
I'm glad that's why I made sure to reach out to Todd first. In regards to that. I mean, look, Omar, I know obviously your coaching career is a little bit, newer than Todd's, although, you are 30 under 30. So, you are already a legend in the world of goalkeeper coaching. But does your tone change how you approach discussing the game and how you and what's going on on the coaching side with a veteran versus a younger goalkeeper? Say you're talking about, a freshman goalkeeper you got at college versus like your senior who was just, National Player of the Year.
Yeah, no, normally what I'll do is I'll, like, with the senior goalkeeper who's starting at the time, we really talked about the X's and O's. We talked about specific stuff that's happening. But for the younger goalkeeper, what I usually do is talk about like the moment around that. We'll just say, hey, it's your first start, or, this is something that's, brand new to you. We're going to put you in this spring game. How are the nerves? And I kind of tailor it around that first, because I think we talked about it with Dan Abrahams, and then Dan Abrahams said it's a little naive for goalkeeper coaches to always subject the goalkeeper in terms of like the errors, that it's always technical. It's always a technical mistake, and that's all it's attributed to, versus what is the thought process? What are the nerves like prior to the game? What caused them to do that? Were they nervous and that's why they were one step back because they didn't want to get chipped, or they didn't want to make a mistake? Or what are those things that are caused them to have a little bit of anxiety prior to the game? So that's probably the only tone I would change. Is the older goalkeepers, I already have an expectation of them already being mentally prepared and not really need to advise them on that. So I go straight to the X's and O's and what they're going to see from the scouting report. Younger goalkeeper, I might tailor it more towards the language that I'm trying to ease them into it, and trying to maybe even tell them a little story of like, hey, my first college game ever, we lost 3-0. It was a rough game. I had a shocker, but at the same time, the coaches trusted in me. So I want to let you know, like, I want you to, ball out, do what you got to do, and just, take care of business. And if something happens, it happens. We learn from it. We discuss it. But I'm just trying to let them know that, like, I've been through it myself, and that's when you kind of get to the point where you relate to them a little bit more. And I feel like that's helped me as a coach with the younger guys. And I feel like, again, when you kind of, as a coach, can kind of show a little bit of your vulnerability and your soft side a little bit, it's good to change it up so they're not just used to you always yelling them or you always being about the X's and O's, but rather you as a human being. And I think, again, being a leader, that's super important, is to give multiple layers to yourself so that they're not always getting this monotone voice over and over and over, but something a little bit different every time.
Yeah, but by the way, guys, how's everyone doing on time? Luis, I know you were on a time crunch, so honestly, I really appreciate the fact that you've gone over an hour with us right now, man. I mean, that means a lot to us, honestly, dude. We're humbled, that you're willing to invest this kind of time.
I just saw the clock. I couldn't believe it's actually been an hour. No, I mean, unfortunately, I do need to get going, but
so no worries, man. All good.
Man, it's been a pleasure, and if you guys want to have me on another time, I'd absolutely love to be on. But
yeah, we'll pencil you in right now, dude.
I could talk about this for hours. Unfortunately, I do have to be somewhere.
No stress.
This has been great.
Can we just ask you just one real quick question before, and then shout out your social media and stuff. We had all these clips of you, man. We'll do that another time, and maybe Omar can do a whole breakdown of you and right in front of your face. Let's see how that works. If there's any youth keepers listening out there who've just been awarded the captaincy as a goalkeeper for maybe their college team, or maybe an MLS Next team, whatever it's called now, DA MLS Next. What's kind of your advice for them regarding to this leadership journey and how they should approach it?
Well, I mean, first, congratulations. It's a big honor to have, but it's a humongous responsibility. And it's funny because the first thing that I go to is Spider-Man, Uncle Ben. Like, with great power comes great responsibility. But because it's true, it's absolutely true. And when you think about what we're going through right now at Inter Miami, it's been difficult. And yet, for me, the real challenge is how do I prepare myself to play well in the game while engaging the group, while keeping the group positive, trying to keep us together, and that's a real challenge. So I mean, that's what being a captain is sort of embracing that challenge and constantly learning how can I approach this situation, but then also evaluate in which way that you did it. Was it the right way? Could you have done it better? But just constantly thinking how I could be better. But I mean, when it comes down to it, if you're the captain of your team, you've got a big responsibility and a big role to play, and maintain that sort of humility that got you there, and know that that you can serve your teammates, but at the same time, your teammates are looking you for direction. And that means at times, even though you may be feeling something, I look at the definition of courage. Courage is acting in spite of fear. So it doesn't say it mitigates fear, it doesn't neutralize fear, it doesn't do anything with it. It acts. And the fact that you're in that position means that you have acted before in that way that people have identified. So you have to trust your instincts a little bit, but also know that you're not always right. And if you don't get it right, there's another day, you learn from it, and you can be better from it. So it's something that I'm still learning from, but it's also an honor that I'm able to have this role, and it's something I take seriously.
Dude, well, I mean, it's an honor that you're willing to spend all this time with us, honestly, man. I mean, this has been, I think, a really thought-provoking episode for I think a lot of parents should listen to this episode too, because I think it'll give them a little bit of a better perspective on what their kids might be going through as well too. Luis, if anybody out there, they want
I didn't even get to share. I got to share this if we're talking about parents. So my parents don't know squat about soccer, right? Like, I'm 36 years old and they still watch. And there's no way my mom or dad could tell you what offsides is, right? But it didn't matter because they loved their kids so much that when I woke up at 6 a.m. before high school, they would just like toss me the ball. And it wasn't like they tossed it properly. They couldn't volley the ball. They couldn't do any of it. But they saw that their kid was so motivated and loved doing this activity so much that they were just willing to do whatever. And sometimes whatever meant that they had to drive 4 hours so I could go train for 1 hour with a real goalkeeper coach and then drive 4 hours back on a Sunday, they were willing to do that. So the best advice that I could give to parents is if your kid is in this and loves it, just support them. Just support them, support. My dad was never critical of me. He never saw something as like, oh, Luis, that was probably your fault, even though he probably knew it. He just gave me a hug. And it's the same thing now when he sends me a text message. He just says he loves me, he prays for me, and that I just need to play with courage. So, if that's any advice I can give to parents is if your kid loves it and is willing to go through the punishment of being a goalkeeper, just love them and support them and do whatever they need to be a better goalkeeper.
Dude, I think that's a great way to end this episode. Luis, where can people reach out to you?
I'm on Instagram, Luis_Robles31. Actually, I don't even know if that's right. I think maybe Luis Robles_31. But I mean, that's pretty much it. So if they want to reach out on a message and ask me a question on goalkeeping, hopefully I see it. If I do see it, then I will respond. But it's been an absolute pleasure to be on the podcast, to get to know you guys a little better. And I'll be looking out for you guys as well. Todd, it's always a pleasure.
Good seeing you, Luis.
Always a pleasure.
Say hello to the family for us.
Will do. Thank you, guys.
For sure.
Right,
Literally, we'll connect in a bit. Todd, if anybody wants to reach out to you, where's the best place for them to reach out to you?
Well,
by the way, congrats on the YouTube content. I know there might be a man right here that might have been helping you out a little bit on that.
Yeah,
no, I didn't touch it.
He's given me a lot of advice over the last few months here. I'm still a rookie at social media, so I look up to Omar. So
Todd, what I would want to do is if we could one day even go on a Zoom call and then I could post it on my channel, but we break down what your thought process was about your session. That would be sick.
All you got to do is let me know when. So
okay, yeah, I definitely want to try that. That'd be sick.
But it's been fun. I've been trying to get a little bit more social media savvy, so to speak. So I'm nowhere near Omar Zini level, but I'm a work in progress. So Twitter, I think it's just my name, Todd Hoffard, and same with Instagram. So.
Yeah. And you're active on Facebook. You're one of those people that's actually active on Facebook. I love that because you're always posting stuff on Facebook, and a lot of people always forget that that's a social media medium that a lot of I don't want to say the older generation, but yeah, there's some of the more the veteran generation.
I've been called worse.
are real big on. Remember, guys, you can reach out to Omar Zini. First off, congratulations once again. Honestly, Todd knows this, how big an honor that is, that 30 under 30, man. I know, I mean, there's probably close to 1,000 candidates for that this year. And then to be one of those 30 coaches, I mean, that means a lot, dude. That's really awesome.
Thanks.
I know how much work you put into this.
Yeah. Congrats. I wasn't aware of that. So congratulations, Omar. It's well deserved.
Thank you. It's been everybody who's helped and given me the proper words of advice and steered me in the right directions, whether it's with my content or just, the way I speak and the way I present myself and all that stuff. So it's been awesome. So I appreciate Todd again for letting me film you that first time. I think it opened a lot of doors, even with Chris Sharper, let me film him afterwards. But sometimes you just need somebody to give you their trust. And then from there, it opens up possibilities other places. And Mike, likewise, man, I mean, you've taken me under your wing. It's been awesome. So I appreciate it.
No worries, man. Now you're going to get the joy of probably getting to present at convention and then have everybody in the crowd just tear you apart. So get ready. I think that's the role of the presenter at convention, is that everybody's judging them on those benches with their little notepads.
Hey, when you're doing that, just don't forget about us little people.
Todd, pretty sure
don't worry.
you
I'll have you guys
present
right
anytime you want to at convention, I'm pretty sure. Remember, guys, at Goalkeeper Podcast or contact at Inside the 18. That's the number 18media.com. If you have a guest suggestion or topic suggestion. The free trial has just ended for Omar Zini's Pro GK Academy premium content. But the content will be continuing based on a subscription service. Omar, do you want to plug it before we go, or?
Sure. Yeah. If anybody wants to know, I have that free trial that's already done, but I have 4 videos. One I actually did with Todd. We broke down the weekend review of the Premier League, and then also did a De Gea breakdown about his wide stance, and I did the breakdown of Meslier versus Areola. A lot of good stuff for coaches too, and especially for players. So go to my website, progkacademy.com, and you can find out more.
Awesome, guys, and we're looking forward to checking out more of that great content from the one and only Todd Hoffard. Shout out again to Luis Robles for taking all the time. That's all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out. Later.